What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Oak Tree Football Channel. The 2021 NFL Draft just ended a few days ago, but that doesn't mean it's too early to start preparing for the 2022 NFL Draft. Today I'm going to be doing my way too early 2022 NFL mock draft. I did this video last year and I had a lot of fun making it, so I decided I was going to do it again this year. Obviously, a lot can change in a year. A lot changed in the past year, and it was really interesting to go back and watch my 2021 way too early mock draft and then compare it to what actually happened in the draft. But yeah, this was so much fun to make last year, and I decided why not do it again this year. So usually I would be doing this on the Draft Network website, but I can't do the 2022 NFL mock draft yet. So I'm going to be doing. I'm on the Pro Football Network website, and I'm going to be doing my 2022 NFL mock draft. This is not my draft order. I don't know what order this is. It might be Super Bowl odds or something, but this is not my draft order. But I'm gonna get right into this. Starting off at number 1, where they have the Detroit Lions. I don't think the Detroit Lions will be picking number 1, but I don't think they're gonna have that good of a year. Obviously, they took Penei Sewell in the first round of this year's draft, which I think is a solid pick. But I think this team needs to find a quarterback of the future. Obviously, they traded for Jared Goff. They traded Jared Goff in exchange for Matthew Stafford with the Rams a few months ago. I don't think Jared Goff is the answer for this team going forward. I think they need to find a quarterback of the future. And the quarterback class next year is really interesting because there's some really talented players here. You look at the top quarterbacks, but the real two options here, I think, are Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of way too early mock drafts. A lot of people think this pick will be Rattler. A lot of people think pick will be Howell. I think both these guys are really good quarterbacks. I think both of them are going to have great seasons in college football this year. But I do believe that Rattler will be the number 1 overall pick, so I'm going to give him number 1. Rattler is a great quarterback. He's a dual threat. Struggled earlier this season in college football, but continued to get better as the season went on. I think he's going to have a great season this year. He's right now my Heisman Trophy winner. I believe he'll win the Heisman this year. So I just think that the Lions will opt to go with Rattler number 1, though I definitely think Howell could be an option. Next up at number 2, we have the Houston Texans. Another team that could use a quarterback, obviously, here at number 2, but what makes it interesting, a little more interesting than the one with the Lions, is that the Texans just drafted Davis Mills with their first pick in the NFL draft in the 3rd round. Obviously, they still have Deshaun Watson on the roster. He's probably not going to play this year. There's just so much going on with him right now. I don't think he's going to be on the team much longer. So I don't think Deshaun Watson is this team's starting quarterback going forward. I don't really like Davis Mills, and I just don't think he's their starting quarterback going forward. And I think if they're picking number 2, they might as well take a quarterback, get some competition there. If they need to, they can trade Davis Mills away. And maybe if they like Davis Mills after they pick a quarterback here, they could trade whoever they pick away here if they really wanted to. I don't love Davis Mills. I don't think he's going to have a great season. I don't expect him to play all that much, but he probably will get some playing time. I don't think he'll impress that much, especially if the Texans are picking number 2. Probably means he didn't play incredible, which, I don't think you can expect that much from a rookie, especially on a not very good team right now. But I just think this pick has to be quarterback right here, and definitely the second best available is Sam Howell. I was talking earlier, or the best available Sam Howell. Like I was saying, the Lions could take Howell number 1. It's really Rattler or Howell. It depends who you like more. I think the Lions will go Rattler number 1, but the Texans still get a really solid quarterback in Sam Howell at number 2. At number 3, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars. I don't know why they're number 3. I would have them a bit lower. I think they'll win more games than just a few. Obviously, they took Trevor Lawrence in the draft with the first pick. That's a great pick. They found their quarterback of the future, which makes quarterback not a need anymore. This is a really interesting pick right here because there's a few ways I could see them go. I think they could use a little bit more help at safety, and I love Kyle Hamilton from Notre Dame. He could be the pick here. Maybe they could go cornerback. I don't think so because they did just draft Tyson Campbell with the first pick of the 3rd round, and they took C.J. Henderson in the 1st round of the 2019 NFL draft, the 2020 NFL draft. I think their offense is pretty solid right now. Maybe they could go for some more weapons here, but they're set at the running back position. I think they're pretty good at the wide receiver position. So I like Kayvon Thibodeau here. Arguably the best player in the draft, just a monster for Oregon, coming off 2 dominant seasons. If he had came out this year, if he was able to come out this year, which obviously he's not able to do because he's only been in college for 2 years. But if he was able to come out, I think he would have been a top 10 pick in the draft probably. So he's an incredibly talented player. He'll probably have another really good season. The Jags do have Josh Allen right now, but I think they need to find him a solid partner on the edge. Like I said, Thibodeau is arguably the best player in this class, so I think this would be a very good pick for the Jaguars, trying to get that defense to, how good it was a few years ago. At number 4, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. As an Eagles fan, I hope they don't pick at number 4, but they probably will pick in the top 10, maybe even the top 5. So this is an interesting one. If they pick number 4, they're probably going to need some quarterback help. You look at the quarterbacks, there are still some options here. I think JT Daniels will be a very early first-round pick. I think Keaton Slovis will be an early first-round pick. I think Desmond Ridder will be a first-round pick. This is a really deep quarterback class. There's some really talented quarterbacks here, but I don't think they're going to go quarterback here. I think they're going to go cornerback with the best player available in Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU. Derek Stingley Jr., you can argue that he's the best player in the class, and I think that's valid because Stingley, in 2019, had such a good season, had a dominant season. 2020 wasn't as good, but still had a very good season. Best cornerback in college football right now, in my opinion. The Eagles did not address cornerback that much in the draft. They need a number 1 cornerback going forward. Obviously, they have Darius Slay on the roster right now, but he's getting up there in age. They need someone to play next to him for a few years and then eventually take over as the number 1 cornerback for the Eagles. The Eagles didn't really address cornerback in the NFL draft this year. The only cornerback they took was Zach McPherson, who I'm not even sure if he'll be an outside cornerback in the NFL, which is what the Eagles need. He could play in the slot, so I think they need a great outside cornerback. And Stingley's easily the best in this class, so this was an easy pick. Number 5, Cincinnati Bengals. This is an easy pick as well. They did not address offensive line in the first round of this year's draft when they should have. They didn't take Penei Sewell. They took Jamar Chase. We go over to offensive tackles here. Best offensive tackle is Evan Neal. I think he's one of the best players in this class. I think he's a really talented player. Definitely the number 1 offensive tackle coming out of Alabama. Just a really talented player. This is an easy pick. Number 6, we got the New York Jets. This is another pretty interesting pick because they got a few ways they could go here. Maybe they go Kyle Hamilton. They get the number 1 safety in the class. Cornerback is still a very big need for this team. So if we come over and look at the cornerbacks, there's still some solid there. I just don't think that any of these are worth the number 6 pick in the draft. Obviously, Pro Football Network has Ahmad Gardner as the number 6 corner, or as the number 6 player. I don't think he's that good. I think he's a good player. I wouldn't say he's the number 6 player in this class. I think they really addressed offense in the NFL draft in the first few rounds this year, so I don't think they're going to go offense. I think they're going to go defense, and in my opinion, the best defensive player available is Drake Jackson from USC, so I'm going to have them making that pick. Drake Jackson is a versatile defensive lineman. He can play edge rusher, he can play defensive tackle. He's had he's had a couple really good seasons for USC, so I really like him a lot, and I love the fit of the Jets. Number 7 is the New York Giants for the first time within a few picks because they pick again number 10. We'll get back to that in a minute. But number 7, obviously the New York Giants. And I think a big need for this team is offensive tackle, and they've tried to address this position over the past 2 years. I just don't think it's worked. They drafted Andrew Thomas 4th overall last year. Wasn't great. I mean, he wasn't great, and that's just the truth. I thought maybe there's a chance they could address the offensive line early in this year's draft. They didn't do that. So I'm looking at offensive tackle here. And the best offensive tackle available, in my opinion, is debatable between Rasheed Walker and Zion Nelson. But I'm going to go with Rasheed Walker here. Walker is my number 2 offensive lineman in this class, so I love the fit here with the Giants. I think he could be a solid player. Maybe he won't be an immediate starter, but he brings a little more depth and versatility to that offensive line, depending on what the Giants want to do in the future. At number 8, we have the Atlanta Falcons. This year they had a chance to go after a quarterback in the first round. Obviously, they didn't do that. They brought in Kyle Pitts, which was a great pick in my opinion. But if they're picking this early again, maybe it's time for them to find a quarterback. Matt Ryan is getting up there in age. You look at the quarterbacks available. There's some really, really talented players here. But the guy who I think will be number 3 overall, someone who could win the Heisman Trophy this year, or the 3rd overall quarterback, someone who could win the Heisman Trophy this year, a really talented quarterback, JT Daniels from Georgia. I think he's going to have a great year. We only saw very little of him this past season. He only started a few games with Georgia, but he looked really, really good. And I think he's going to have another great season. Like I said, he could be contending for that Heisman Trophy with some other quarterbacks like Spencer Rattler or Sam Howell. So JT Daniels, really talented player. Like I said, really small sample size of what we've seen of him so far, but definitely a ton of upside right there. So I love this pick for the Falcons. Number 9, we have the Denver Broncos. And I think this team, their biggest need right now is still linebacker. They drafted Baron Browning in the 3rd round, I believe, of this year's draft, but I think they still need some linebacker help. And their best available is Christian Harris from Alabama. I don't love Harris as much as some people, but I think he's still a really solid linebacker. I think the Broncos would love to get him at number 9. Number 10, we have the Giants again, like I said, and this where it gets a little bit more interesting because could they go quarterback here? I think this is kind of a make or break year for Daniel Jones because his first 2 seasons in the NFL hasn't really been that great. And if the Giants are picking this early, there's still some really good quarterbacks left. Could they try and find a quarterback of the future? They definitely could. But I don't think Daniel Jones is going to have that good of a year, especially if they're picking in the top 10. He probably won't have the best year, but I think they're not going to go with a quarterback, despite that definitely being an option. I think cornerback is a big need for this team, and I think they're going to go Ahmad Gardner here. Just a really talented cornerback. Gardner, I like him a lot. I think he's a solid player. Like I said, I don't think he should go around that 5 or 6 range. Which is where they have him ranked, the number 6 player in this class, but I like him going, around number 10, and I like the fit to the New York Giants. Number 11 is the Washington football team, and I think this is pretty easy. They need to go for a quarterback. They didn't really address that position this year's draft. Obviously, they have Ryan Fitzpatrick. He's not going to be there forever. He's going to be there. He's going to be gone soon, honestly. And then Tyler Heineke, not the future of this team. I'm sorry, but I think he can be solid. I just don't see him, as the future. Like I said, they need to find a quarterback. Arguably the best available is Keaton Slovis. I think that's who they'll go with. Slovis is a really talented quarterback prospect coming out of USC. He's had a couple years of good production. Was a bit disappointing in 2020, but was really good in 2019. I think he'll bounce back in a big way in 2021. And he wasn't even that bad in 2020, just not really as good as a lot of his expectations were. But Slovis, really talented quarterback prospect. I think the Washington football team, I really like the fit of him going to the Washington football team. I think this makes a lot of sense. Slovis, definitely one of the most talented quarterbacks in this upcoming draft class. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders. They could be looking at a quarterback as well. I think they're kind of a dark horse team to look for a quarterback. I don't think they're going to go for a quarterback. I think it's possible. I think Desmond Ridder is a good option here. I think Malik Willis from Liberty is definitely a very good option here. But I think I think Derek Carr is gonna stay their quarterback. They could trade away Derek Carr. I think that's definitely an option, and then they bring in a quarterback in the draft. But I don't think that's what's gonna happen. It could happen. But earlier this offseason, of course, they completely destroyed that offensive line, and they drafted Alex Leatherwood in the 1st round of this year's draft. He'll probably be a starter. Obviously, that was probably a reach right there, taking Leatherwood so early. And I think this team still needs offensive line help, so we look at offensive tackle. By far the best available, in my opinion, is Zion Nelson from Miami, Florida. So that's an easy pick. Nelson, really, really talented offensive lineman, somebody that I like a lot. So I love the pick here for the Raiders. Number 13, the Carolina Panthers are on the clock. This is an easy pick right here. Kyle Hamilton has fallen all the way down to number 13. They got to take him right there. Hamilton is a guy that, like I was mentioning earlier, I love. Great tackling ability. Just a playmaker on the defensive side of the ball. And the Panthers don't really need safety that much. They drafted J.C. Horn in the 1st round this year. Obviously, he's a cornerback. But I see them going back to the secondary in next year's draft. Kyle Hamilton is just such a good player. And if he's there at number 13, I think this is a great pick. And I would love to be able to see what the Panthers would be able to do with a guy like Hamilton on that team as they continue to build up that secondary. They have Jeremy Chin there. They have, like I just mentioned, they have J.C. Horn there. Now they bring in Kyle Hamilton. Number 14, we have the Minnesota Vikings. I think this team needs to address the edge. They had a pretty good draft. Obviously, they brought in Christian Darrisaw in the first round, but I think the edge rusher is still a big need for them. We look at edge rusher, and the best available is Zach Harrison. I like him a lot, coming out of Ohio State, making that the pick right there. I think he brings a lot of talent to a defensive line. Obviously, Ohio State defensive linemen have really translated well to the NFL, and while I don't think he'll be as good as some of the other recent edge rushers coming out of Ohio State, I think he's still a really, really solid player. So I think he'll be the pick right there. Number 15, the Arizona Cardinals. They're pretty low. I think they'll be a playoff team this year. But they need a cornerback. They didn't take cornerback round 1 this year. They need cornerback desperately. So we go over to cornerbacks. Best available, Darian Kendrick. So that will be the pick there. Kendrick is a really talented guy. Could have came to the draft this year. Decided not to. I believe he's not a part of the Clemson program anymore. But still, I mean, a really, really solid cornerback. And wherever he ends up, I think he can have a big season there and become a first-round pick. At number 16, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm looking at a quarterback here. Ben Roethlisberger is getting really old. He's going to retire at some point. This team needs a quarterback of the future. Maybe Ben Roethlisberger is not even going to be on the team anymore. They got Mason Rudolph, but he's not the future of this team. They need a quarterback who can be the future. And there's a few options here. Like I was mentioning earlier, this is a really deep quarterback class. But I like Desmond Ridder from Cincinnati. Ridder, really talented player. Obviously, he's coming from a smaller school, a Group of 5 school, but Cincinnati has been really good recently. Ridder has great scrambling ability. He's got good arm talent as well. A guy that I like a lot. And he's been a winner with Cincinnati. I mean, he's took their team almost to the playoffs this past year. So Desmond Ridder, really talented quarterback, and right now I think it's a safe bet that he will be a first rounder at the draft. Number 17, we got the New England Patriots. They had a pretty solid draft. The only problem with it is that they did not address the wide receiver position at all. Obviously, they brought in Mac Jones to be their hopeful franchise quarterback. But like I said, they did not address the wide receiver position at all until the seventh round. They need to address that early in the upcoming draft. And there are some really solid receivers available. Obviously, nobody has picked a wide receiver yet. Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson, both from Ohio State, really talented receivers. But I don't think they're going to pick any of those guys. I'm going to go with John Mechie here, which is a bit of a more interesting pick. But I think Mechie is going to have a great season. Obviously, Alabama receivers, he's coming from Alabama. Alabama receivers usually do well, usually are drafted highly. But Mechie, he's going to be the number 1 receiver this year, of course, with Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle both leaving. He was really good last season, and I think he's just going to continue to get better as that number 1 receiver this year. I think he's going to have a big year. So I think he will be the first receiver off the board. I think he will be considered the wide receiver 1 in next year's draft class. Next up, we got the Chargers, another team that I think could use a wide receiver. They have Justin Herbert as the quarterback of the future. I think now is the time to find him some weapons. They've already got him some good weapons, but I think they could find him some more. And I like Chris Olave from Ohio State. I think right now he's the best receiver in this class. Like I said, I think John Mechie will be considered the number 1 receiver next year. But right now, I think Olave is the best wide receiver in this class. So I love the pick here for the Chargers. Number 19, we got the Dallas Cowboys. I think this team needs some edge rusher help. They need to find some help on that defensive line. They really addressed linebacker position in this year's draft. Now it's time for them to address the edge rusher position. And Brenton Cox from Florida is a really solid player. Could go on the other side of DeMarcus Lawrence. They really need to find a solid partner for DeMarcus Lawrence. I like Brenton Cox from Florida, so I think this pick makes a lot of sense. Number 20, we got the Eagles back on the clock. And earlier I was talking about if they're really going to pick at number 4, why not take a quarterback? Jalen Hurts, it probably means that Jalen Hurts didn't have the best season, but I didn't have them taking a quarterback because Derek Stingley was available, and I think he's too good to pass up on. But this is a really deep quarterback class, like I've said many times, and if they're going to pick so early, if they're really going to have not that good of a season, why not bring in a quarterback to potentially set up a battle between Jalen Hurts and, if Hurts wins, he'll be the starting quarterback, but if whoever they draft wins, he'll be their starting quarterback. He's going to be a solid backup if not. like I've said so many times, there's some really good quarterbacks here. But I really like Malik Willis from Liberty, a guy I really like. Another guy that's coming from a smaller college in Liberty, but a guy that's clearly really talented. He's a great runner. He's a great passer. I love Malik Willis, and I think this would be a solid pick for the Eagles if they're gonna take a quarterback. So number 21, we got the Tennessee Titans. This is an interesting one right here. But I think they need to address the wide receiver. They didn't do that early in this year's draft. I think they need to do it in next year's draft. And Garrett Wilson is still available. This is an easy pick. Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, they're interchangeable for who is really the best wide receiver right now. For me, it's Chris Olave, but it could definitely become Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, really, really talented player from Ohio State. This is a pretty easy pick for me. Number 22, we got the Colts. This is an interesting one. I think they need to address offensive line, offensive tackle, specifically the left tackle position. They need to find a left tackle of the future after Anthony Costanzo left. We look at offensive tackles. Charles Cross is the best available. They have him as the number 30 prospect in the class. I think he's a little bit better than that. Former 5-star recruit. He's only played 1 year, but I've seen some talk about him potentially having a good season this year. I definitely think he will have a good season. Coming off a really good year, so I like Charles Cross right there. Number 23, we got the Jets back on the clock, and this is where I think they need to address the cornerback position. I was talking about it earlier. Could they address it there? I don't think they will. But here, I think they'll take Kaiir Elam from Florida. He's a guy that I really like. Another guy. I think he's really talented. So I think this is some good value if the Jets were able to make this pick, and I think he could be someone that could come in and immediately be a starter for the Jets. Number 24, we got the Saints. One of the most interesting quarterback situations in the NFL. Obviously, they got Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill, and they drafted Ian Book. The Saints had an interesting draft. They made a couple good picks, but one thing don't think they drafted enough of is wide receivers. They need to find a wide receiver right here for the future. They have Michael Thomas, but other than that, who do they really have that can make a big impact at that position? Wide receivers, there's still some really talented ones left. Right here, I'm going to go with Justin Ross from Clemson. Ross didn't play at all this year because of an injury. That injury concern is still there, that health concern. But Ross is a really talented player, and if he does play this season, and if he can stay healthy, and if he can play for the full year, I think he's going to have a big season. So I think this would be a great pick for the Saints if he's available. Number 25, we got the Cleveland Browns. They had a great draft. They're really becoming a great team right now. This is a team that could contend for the Super Bowl this year, which is so crazy to think about considering a few years ago they were the worst team in the NFL. They were a 0-win team a few years ago. I think they'll pick a little bit later than 25. But obviously this isn't my order. They have him at number 25. I think this team needs to address the edge rusher position. They signed Jadeveon Clowney, but I don't think he's going to be their edge rusher of the future. They only brought him in on a 1-year deal. They need to find someone that they can have on the other side of Myles Garrett going forward. And I like Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan. I think he's a really talented player. I think that he brings a lot to his game. Some people don't like Hutchinson as much, but I think he's a really good pass rusher. So I like this pick right here for the Browns. Number 26, we got the Miami Dolphins. They had a really solid draft. The only thing I didn't like about it is that they didn't address the running back position that much until later in the draft. They need to find a running back because they just don't have one. It's really interchangeable between Isaiah Spiller and Breece Hall for who's the running back one in this class. For me, it's Breece Hall. I think he's a really, really talented player right now. Coming off a great season. I think he's going to have another great season this year for Iowa State. So I have him going at number 26. Number 27, we got the Baltimore Ravens. They had a pretty solid draft. I think the team still needs to address the safety position, though. They did bring in Ardarius Washington as an undrafted free agent, but I don't really know if he's going to be able to be, a solid safety. So, looking at the safeties here, by far the number one is Bubba Bolden. He's a guy that I like coming from Miami. I think he could go earlier than this, but I really like Bubba Bolden a lot. I think this would be a great pick for the Ravens. Number 28, we have the Detroit Lions back on the clock. They have by far the worst receiving room in the NFL right now. They need to find a wide receiver. Obviously, I don't really think they'll go wide receiver number 1 overall. That's where they found their quarterback. But right here, they can find Spencer Rattler some weapons because they really don't have any right now. You look at the wide receivers available. It's interesting to see who could be the number 1, especially at this time or next year. But I like George Pickens from Georgia. He recently tore his ACL. Probably not going to play, or he's not going to play this year. But a really talented player, and I think he's good enough to go late first round. So yeah, I think Pickens is a guy that could make a big impact on an NFL roster. Obviously, there's that injury concern now that he tore his ACL. But a talented player, like I said, I think he's good enough to go round one. Number 29, we got the Green Bay Packers. And this is another team that needs help at the wide receiver position. They addressed wide receiver in the NFL draft this year, but they didn't do it round one. And, Devontae Adams, I believe his contract is expiring after the year. I believe a lot of their wide receivers have expiring contracts after the year. They need to draft someone early, and I think Treylon Burks from Arkansas is a really talented receiver. I don't think he's been getting, that much hype or talk about him. Obviously, here they have him as the 19th prospect, but other than that, I haven't really seen him going in many mock drafts. But Treylon Burks is a really talented player from Arkansas, and I think he's going to have a really good season this year. So I think he will do just about enough to get into the first round and go number 29th overall to the Green Bay Packers. Number 30, we've got the Buffalo Bills. There were some rumors that they would go running back early in this year's draft. They didn't do that. But next year, I think it's definitely a possibility. We look at the running backs. Obviously, Breece Hall's off the board, but Isaiah Spiller, arguably the best running back in the class. That's an easy pick if they really are going to go running back. Number 31, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the defending Super Bowl champions. Obviously, here they don't have them as the Super Bowl champions. But another team that is just a really complete team right now. If they didn't take Kyle Trask, I would say this pick could be a quarterback, but obviously they took Kyle Trask at the end of the second round. I think he could be the quarterback of the future. I think their biggest need right now is probably running back, and they have Leonard Fournette there, but I think he'll probably leave after the season. They have a few guys at running back, but no one that I really think can be the future at that position. They need to find someone at running back, and Kyren Williams from Notre Dame is a really talented player. I think he's a right now late first to early second round talent. So I think this would be a great pick for the Buccaneers. I think he's someone that could develop into a solid number one running back in the NFL with the right team, and I think he could potentially find that team with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And then finally, we got number 32, the predicted Super Bowl champions here, the Kansas City Chiefs. This is an interesting one, but I think this team needs some more help on the edge. They've got some solid players there. I just think they need some more. We look at the edge rushers here. And the best available here is George Karlaftis. I think that's how you pronounce that. I probably messed that up, but from Purdue, I think he's a really solid edge rusher from what I've seen. So I think this will be the pick. So here is the final result of my mock draft. Thank you guys for watching this video. I had a lot of fun making it, just like last year. I'm excited to look at this again, next year when the NFL draft is rolling around, the 2022 NFL draft, to see how much has changed. Just like I did this year. And it was really interesting. Obviously, a lot of these picks are going to be wrong, but it's way too early. Obviously, picks are going to be wrong. This is just for fun. Like I said, this isn't my draft order. This isn't even my big board or anything. This is just Pro Football Network. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I was gonna my NFL 2021 NFL draft grades video is coming out in a few days. I wanted to post something before that, so I decided to do this to have a little bit of fun. Tell me some of your guys' way too early predictions for the 2022 NFL draft. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.